In this video, we're going to talk all about the last 12 months of Star Wars Shatterpoint. Hey guys, Rich from Richmond Gaming. Hope everyone is doing fantastically well. And yes, can you believe it? It has been actually now over 12 months since the release of Star Wars Shatterpoint. We've learned lots of things along the way. We understand some of the quite stupid rules that they've decided to implement when it comes to certain things, all of which we're going to be talking about in this Shatterpoint a year in review. And joining me to go through all of this and a little bit more is Mr. Quinn Duggan. Quinn, how the hell are you doing, sir? Nice, okay. Yeah, Shatterpoint, Quinn, a year old already. It's a little bit different, isn't it? Because a year into MCP, almost none of us had gone into stores and were actually able to play games because it had the unfortunate timing of releasing right at the very beginning of lockdown. But obviously, Shatterpoint was released. We were back into full flow of events and everything else. You know, COVID was a thing of the distant past. And was definitely out of mind, I think, for most people when Shatterpoint was released. And I think it's fair to say, Quinn, it got off to a pretty good start. I think the game was fairly well received by at least most people that I know played it, and I believe sold out in most countries from the pre-orders. What's your thoughts? What's your initial sort of memories of when it first came out and really getting our hands on the rule set and what you thought of it?
I remember playing a lot of games on TTS before the actual physical copies were out. That's the first thing that sticks out. The second is hopping on a train, going to Halifax, meeting you at the station, being handed a bag, and then walking onto another train.
I forgot we'd done that, yeah. Didn't you have like a 12-minute turnaround or something?
Pretty much. And I was sat there on the train with the tape, and like there was like an off-duty ticket inspector sat like opposite me, and I was like, "Can I borrow your keys, mate?" It's just so I can undo this cellophane. And just started like sleeving up cards on the way home.
Yeah, I mean, I was fortunate enough that I got hold of an early copy. No thanks to you, AMG. I'm not allowed things. I'm not allowed nice things from AMG.
I probably shouldn't. Friends with AMG now.
Probably shouldn't say that anymore. I am friends with AMG now, but yeah, I managed to get. I got the review copy or the demo copy for Leodis, and I remember we did a few live streams, sort of looking at the terrain and things like that, building the miniatures, and that's the first thing I think, Quinn, from the box that. Because it's really difficult to tell, right? When you see a painted miniature that somebody's painted up, a very good painter can add a lot of detail to a mini that has none just by being able to, you know, freehand and paint in things. But that for me was the first thing that blew me away with Shatterpoint, was especially having played Legion in the past and never been a fan of like that. What do you call it? Like heroic scale where the heads...
Scale where they have giant heads and hands.
Yeah. Which I've never been a fan of. But, you know, as a fan of... You know, we spoke a lot, Quinn, on the 4th of May special where we ranked all of the TV shows and things. But I think for both of us being a really big fan of the Clone Wars animation style, the fact that that was kind of the style that they'd brought into the game, for me, I was really happy with, and just the quality of the miniatures is was and is, at least in my opinion, some of the best, if not the best out there at the moment when it comes to a miniatures game. I don't know how you feel about the minis and how well they've stood up with the other releases we've had.
Yeah, for the most part, they're really good. The only issue I have with the minis is they keep putting contact points for sprues on lightsaber blades, and it really annoys me. Because there are also other lightsabers on sprues in this game that have no contact points of that kind. Like,
yeah.
If you're not going to do it for those ones, then don't do it for any of the other ones, because it's a real ball ache to clean up.
I have, and that's the thing with a lightsaber is you want it smooth, don't you?
Yeah.
And it only takes, you get your X-Acto knife out and you start scraping away or whatever.
Oh no, I
And
don't use a knife on
well, I
those.
mean, I have
Files
I have
all the
moved
way.
to
Yeah.
I have moved to.
Like,
I saw Laura was doing her nails the other day, and I was like, I'm gonna steal these off you, and she was like,
what you
okay.
need is these, mate. Proper
they good?
sanding sticks. They're real good. Like
I'll have to have a look
they're
at them.
bendable. Like,
Well, yeah, so are these.
but they're also really thin.
But yeah, so I think I agree. There's always a couple right of things, but for the most part, I think that the minis are very very good. And let's talk about then, Quinn. I suppose it kind of sort of leads us nicely into the kind of core box, because I think a good testament of a game is how well that core box kind of holds up over the first 12 months. Are people still playing characters from it? How well, has there been power creep and that sort of thing? So, core box, obviously, that was the first thing that got released. Then alongside that, we had Obi-Wan and the Dooku box, which I think made sense for the characters that we got in there. But we had Asajj and Anakin, Maul and Ahsoka, or Jedi No More Ahsoka versions. Then we had a couple of units of Mandalorians, didn't we? We had two supports units and two secondary units, and then some clones and some droids. But I would sort of extend that out as well with Obi-Wan, with Dooku, and the other ones that came with them as well. Because I feel like whilst they weren't in the core box, they were kind of phase one release.
It kind of turned like, 4 half factions into 3 full ones, right?
Yes, yeah, obviously with the
Mandalorians,
the Mandalorians,
Republic, then Separatists, right?
Yeah. But how do you feel the core box has held up? Do you still think it's the best starting point for somebody playing the game? Do you still find yourself playing characters from the core box?
So in terms of starting point for the game, it depends on what you want, right? Because the way Shatterpoint is set out as a game is you buy 2 squad boxes, the squad boxes are fully self-contained, and then you just can play the 2 of them together, right?
Yeah.
The one issue with that is you don't get any Shatterpoint cards except in the core box.
I think there's enough foil promo cards going around.
There probably are, but I don't know, maybe the next mission pack they do put a Shatterpoint card, like an alt art Shatterpoint card in there, just so people don't have to get that core box if they can't track down a foil or a spare.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind that actually. Yeah, I definitely wouldn't mind that.
Yeah, as for characters, there are definitely some standouts in that box, much like there was, Zemo for MCP's initial core box. Kalani is in every Separatist list. Rex is in most Republic lists. The Mandalorians, I think, are just waiting for some more primaries to be available for them that really synergize. Give us pre-Vizsla AMG.
Well, we're gonna get the armor, aren't we? And that box.
Yeah, but they're a whole different era, and it's a whole thing. But yeah, I play a lot of Anakin still. Maul still seems fairly popular. Ventress and Ahsoka less so. There are some people that still play Ventress in Seps, sometimes in Dathomir, but she tends to be overshadowed by Grievous and Maul respectively. Ahsoka just kind of sits there.
Yeah, Ahsoka and Maul are almost kind of like the neutral ones, aren't they?
Yeah,
in that box, but. Yeah, I think I agree for the most part, Quinn. I think it holds up well. I think it's still pretty good value. If you are looking to get in the game, and I think if anyone was to ask me, I would still probably say it's a good place to start. I think it's definitely still the best place to start. I think it's, as I say, I think it's good value. I think you can always sell the terrain if that's not your. If that's not your thing, there's always
or donate it to your local organizer for events.
Yeah, well, no, absolutely. Gaming stores and things like that it's the one thing that they always struggle with, isn't it? Especially with a new game. How did you find in that first sort of 3 or 4 months, Quinn? So I suppose, you know, kind of over the summer months. How did you find the reception? How did you find, you know, when you were showing people the game, playing at events? What was the general reaction you were getting from people?
It was, I mean, pretty much overwhelmingly positive. You know, in those initial months, we had like pretty much an event every month at Sanctuary, and like I definitely tried to make most of them. You know, traveling down with other people. I think we had one element, I want to say, like element sort of got off the ground a little bit later. But yeah, like, you know, there were events cropping up here and there. They're not, I think they're more common now, which
Yeah.
is obviously a good thing because that means you know, the game has grown. Probably because of the introduction of original trilogy characters, let's be honest. Boomers want their guys.
Yeah, I think. I mean, I remember the first sort of mini event, and it wasn't really an event. It was a demo day, and I just put it out there, you know, in the Loyalist chat. It's all painted up now. I'm going to be down on. I think I did 2 nights. 2 nights. Over 4 nights over 2 weeks, back to back, like a Wednesday, Thursday. I went down, you know, for like 5:30. Set up and was just, you know, booking people in, and it got to the point where there were that many people that wanted to come and have a demo of the game. I was playing four people were playing at the same time, and it was right. You can look after squad 1, you can look after squad, you know, different strike teams and things like that. So there were 4 people playing, and I think, yeah, overall the reception was really, really good. You know, people seem to really like it. I think one of the things that we haven't yet seen, and it took a long time for MCP to get there with this, is those bigger events, those 32 plus people events. Now, obviously, we've had it with the TTS leagues, but I kind of, you know, I don't include them. I think a real testament of a game is when people are actually willing to turn up to a 2-day event, play 6 rounds of it, and there being enough people there to support it. So we haven't quite got there yet. But
I do think we're going to break into that now with the introduction of the GT system, right?
Absolutely, yeah. I think that's going to be a big thing. You know, some official support from AMG when it comes to competitive play. I think will be you know, definitely welcomed by the community. And I also think, when you sort of alluded to it, the introduction of some OG characters, you know, your New Hope, Empire, Revenge. I nearly said Revenge of the Jedi. Then Return of the Jedi.
Revenge of the Jedi. No.
Revenge of the Jedi. Yeah, type characters. I think will definitely bring other people in, because we just know, right? You'll speak to some people and they will have never watched the Clone Wars. They'll
still be of that mindset of, oh, cartoons are for children.
Yeah. And, you know, that maybe did put them off a little bit. Let's talk a little bit, Quinn, about the game itself. How does it kind of exceed, or maybe even not meet, your kind of expectations of how the game was going to play? Because I think it's fair to say we approach games, at least in our play style, in a very, very similar way. We like to roll dice and beat things up on a table. It doesn't matter what game we're playing. It can be MCP, it could be Old World, or anything else in between. You know, we like a good old scrap, don't we, in the middle of the table. How do you think it's kind of played out? Because, you know, there's the rule set, and then there's actually how people learn to play and win the game. But how are you finding that side of it? Did it meet your expectations? Is it exceeded them in any way?
Yeah. So first of all, murder very difficult in this game, or at least complete and total, like taking things off the board, very tricky. I've only seen it done like a handful of times. Probably single digits, to be honest. Like, even now, a year later.
I've never played a game where somebody has won by tabling their opponent.
No, like I think it is physically possible, but like I think your opponent has to help you do it.
Yeah.
Like,
They need to be scoring enough points their turn to elongate the game as well,
yeah.
don't they?
I think movement is far more important in this game than I had expected it to be. Just because coming from like MCP being like my main game over like, the past 5 years, um, like movement is important in MCP, but there are far less plentiful sources of it, especially for other people in that
Yeah.
game. Like, pretty much, like for the first sort of 6 months of the game, pretty much every secondary had a way to move other people. That was like kind of the MO of secondary units.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, movement is very important. The whole shifting active objectives dynamic is very, very interesting, and like not something I've seen replicated anywhere else. It's much more preferable to me than having an extract system like MCP, where you just pick things up and can run away. I like running to things, not running away with things. I think that's just a bit more engaging if everybody's scrambling for one central fixed point. Well, not central, but a fixed point.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah, I think for me, we had lots of speculations, didn't we? Before the game was released, what it was going to be like, and I think the one thing that they did very, very well is the only similarities between this game and MCP is they're played on a 3x3 mat and they're by AMG. Like they are worlds apart when it comes to the play style, the way that you play it, the things that you do, and then even the rules in the game itself. I don't know if you ever have done, Quinn, but I found myself having to check myself sometimes and go, am I playing Shatterpoint or MCP? Do I need to be in range 2 or range 1 of this thing? And so I'll be playing MCP and somebody tries to do something and I'll be like, haha, I'm going to do this. No, I can't do that because this character's dazed and therefore they can't do anything, versus in Shatterpoint when they
the whole interactivity whilst being downed is like, it's very jarring initially, I think, but the more you play, I think the more you learn to not only engage with it but also leverage it to your advantage, which I really like.
Yeah, out of turn things are a huge part in this game, aren't they? And they really often end up being the difference between, success and failure. And as you say, I would argue one of the biggest contributors to that is not necessarily being able to make an attack or do a thing. It's I'm going to get to move, right? So the thing that you thought you were going to get, you now because of the way that the points work, and you need more characters there than your opponent to be able to take a point, can really mess with your opponent's plans. And I do quite like that. And it's weird. I have found myself, if I now look at the way in which I play Shatterpoint versus MCP, because I tried to play Shatterpoint in the same way that I played MCP, which is I'm going to win via attrition, I'm going to get to do this, this, and this, but you just really can't do that.
Yeah,
for the,
a lot of
for
the
the
time,
most part.
like the way your attrition works in Shatterpoint is you've got a timely you've downed someone at a timely point in the game where suddenly that swung a point and made it so your opponent can't necessarily get it with their remaining activations.
Yeah.
Which just lets that sort of snowball. Another thing that is very different between the two games for me is how you interact with terrain, right? Because in MCP, it's kind of just additional ammunition for the characters that can throw it to just do bonus damage, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
A lot of the time, especially with the number of characters that have wall crawler or flight or whatever else, terrain is largely ignored or is actively, it's either ignored or removed for the most part in MCP.
Oh, if you're playing against a big throwy team, you can end up with almost no terrain left on the board at the end of the game, right?
Magneto shows up and suddenly there's a massive crater in the middle of the board where there used to be a bunch of cars.
And it's not only that, it's that ever-changing environment, isn't it? That piece of that size 2 terrain piece that Rocket was stood behind, where he can shoot over but you can't see him. that gets removed, that kind of changes how you have to play, whereas it's static, right? In Shatterpoint, it's static terrain.
Not only is it static, but also it massively affects like control of objectives, right? Because of elevation rules.
Yeah, yeah. Elevation rules being having to be at the same elevation level, or not having to be, but getting priority contesting if you're at the same elevation levels, plays a big part, I think. What are your thoughts on some of the early changes they made to the game? And the one that sticks out for me, which I don't know if it came out before the core box was released or very, very soon afterwards, was around how cover works in the game. So for anyone that doesn't know, cover, if you were a top or were protected by a piece of terrain, you would get cover. Cover in this game gives you 1 extra die. That was changed so that you could never benefit from cover from terrain if you didn't have a hunker token already, which was a big change, because it definitely elevated some, let's call them factions. We know there are no factions in this game, but it elevated some and brought some others down. What are your thoughts on some of the early changes and kind of early erratas that we had in the game?
Yeah, it's a really interesting thing, because I think that whole cover change leads into one of my sort of gripes with the game, which is just generally how hunker tokens work. Like, I know that they don't feel complete as a mechanic to me. And like, I get that obviously, unless you have an extra source of gaining them, you are only ever getting them by taking a whole action, right?
Yeah.
Whereas, like, things like Republic, most clones have defensive
Dish
maneuver.
them out like candy, doesn't it, Rex? It's like, you have a hunker and you have a hunker and you have a hunker.
Like candy, and it's like, oh yeah, great, you can, you get this bonus dice of cover from terrain, but then somebody walks within 2 of you and all of it immediately goes away, unless you're playing Obi-Wan. It's just an awkward interaction, like, in terms of, like, just as a mechanic, being something that you can, spend literally half of your resources of an activation gaining for someone to go, cool, I'm going to move, which is something I was doing anyway, and now I'm engaged with you and on this point, and you've lost the thing anyway.
Yeah, I was thinking about this the other day, and I think I do agree in that hunker is, or a hunker token, obviously the action is taking cover, I think, is the action that it's called.
You get your range 1 shove.
Yeah, which is a range 1 shove in any direction of your own character, and then everything else. Like, I was thinking about this, and like, I think it would be nice if there was a way of kind of expanding that out, right? Something like if a character, because let's be honest, unless it's in the very early stages of the game and you have moved and you are on a point and you can't heal anything off, you can't do any damage because you're not in range, you'll take a hunker, right?
Yeah.
That's kind of it. Or you want that extra little bit of movement. I often find it's the movement aspect more than
that one
the
little
hunker
token
token itself.
You just close enough to then move and get to that ingress that you otherwise wouldn't, right?
I think, you don't really see them outside of, as you say, affiliations that are built around it, or factions, or leaders. So the Rex Obi-Wan combo, clones as general have a lot of access to hunker tokens. I think Mando gives out a hunker token as part of his identity thing as well. But the fact that that's then it, somebody moves, and it's not even like it's not even within at the end of a turn or something. I think something I'd really like to see is the verbiage and the wording, and we're kind of getting into the latter section of the video now, but let's cover it, is something that's, if a character ends their activation within range 2 of you, you then lose the hunker token. And at least then, if you've, as part of your defensive tech, when, if you're taking a hit, you've got a way of being able to get back out of range and keep it, sort of thing, would be quite nice. Because it can happen mid-activation, can't it? Like, somebody walks up, they remove your hunker token, and then they can carry on.
Yeah, like they've walked into range of you, hit somebody else, got a reposition, ran away from you, and you're still, you're not hunkered down anymore, even though the threat has got yeah. I like it in terms of its cover rule, not its cover rule, but its cover from terrain rule. I like that you have to be hunkered to get it. I think it's an interesting
I'm absolutely fine with that. Yeah, I'm okay with that.
To be honest, I'd be more interested in maybe a rework of the mechanic to be. They are a resource that you expend to ignore a shove. I think that would be cool. So, if you have any number of hunker tokens, you benefit from cover 1, and you can get terrain cover. And then, on top of that, you spend them to ignore shoves. I think
that'd be pretty cool.
It just makes them, an actual resource kind of thing. They go away on their own in that case, right? You don't then need to have people walk into range to get rid of them because they go away on their own by virtue of the characters spending them, right?
Yeah. No, I think I do like that. I think some other ones that stand out to me. There was a very early errata on Dooku's card, which I think made perfect. Made absolute perfect
It made
sense.
Dooku feel more like Dooku rather than someone playing a slot machine.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we're going to get on to some errata things, Quinn, and things that we'd like to see develop in the game a little bit later on. But for now, let's take a quick look, Quinn, at some sort of, let's call them highlights and then indeed lowlights of the year. So these are going to be, we're picking 6 characters each, and it's going to be our favourite and then least favourite. So when we're saying least favourite and favourite, we're not saying the best and worst. We're talking purely subjectively about our own favourite and least favourite characters in the game.
We're also talking about them in-game, right? Not necessarily in the Star Wars universe.
In-game, yeah, absolutely. So let's start with you then, Quinn. So your favourite primary... you've actually gone, and for some reason, I'll let you pick first. And because I didn't want duplicates.
The idea, Rich, that's why.
Because I didn't want duplicates, you have gone with Mr. Cad Bane, Notorious Hunter. He's definitely not the best primary in the game, Quinn.
No.
But what is it about Cad that you just like?
So, for one, as far as I'm aware, he's the only 9 cost in the game, right?
I believe so, yes.
Yeah. So, one, that's it's a thing that was first introduced with him, hasn't been replicated since. Up until then, we were kind of stuck in that 7 to 8 range, and then he brought it up to 9, Mace brought it down to 6, and just kind of expanded that scope. Bringing 2 Force, I think, is very interesting for a primary character, because they cost more, which actually means they cost less, but the things they can bring cost more. I find that interesting as a balancing mechanic. But also the fact that he's intertwined with a forced recovery mechanic.
Yes.
Just to kind of offset that. And just also generally all the things that Cad does. He feels balanced when you play against him and when you play with him, I feel. But equally, he doesn't feel that because he's a 9, he therefore has to be worse than everything else in the game because he is technically the cheapest. But he's at the worst end of that pricing bracket, right?
Yeah, because that's the idea, right? Isn't it? Is that as a 9, the idea being is that the way in which squad points work in this game, the more squad points you bring, the worse you are in theory as a character. As we know, that's most definitely not the case in some instances. And again, we'll save that for future potentially writers that we go through. But yeah, look, Cad is a firm favourite of mine, Quinn. I've played him a lot. I've played him a lot in Separatists. I think he worked really well with Hadouken, as I nicknamed it. They've nailed him as a character, right? I loved him in other media, and it feels like this is Cad Bane. And I will say, for the most part, they've got that with most of the characters, right? Most of the named characters in this game feel like you are playing the named character. I've gone for probably one of, if not the newest edition, which is going to be Clone Sergeant Hunter. Obviously, hot off watching Bad Batch Season 3, which was just chef's kiss, so good. These guys were released, and I had never really been a big Galactic Republic player. I had played them, but you will have never seen me taking them to events and leagues and things like that, because they just weren't my play style. We've already mentioned that I am more on the side of aggression. And for me, Hunter brings that in absolute buckets. His leader of the batch is so good. And again, it feels like Hunter when you're playing him. Let's go on to secondaries. I'll start this one, Quim. And again, you stole mine, but you're going to see a little theme throughout here. But mine's going to be Wrecker and Omega. Wrecker and Omega. I really like these guys. Obviously, I believe still the only secondary in the game that has 2 sides to their order card.
Nope.
R2-D2 does now, doesn't it?
Yep.
Yeah, Beat Boop does as well, yeah. But still, really, really like that different side that you can choose. I love his mechanics. Muscle of the Batch is really good. I mean, and you've played me against enough times, Quinn, now to know that if you go up against Bad Batch, this is the guy you want to be going for, not any of the other characters.
You're attacking Hunter because he's nigh immortal.
He is nigh immortal, absolutely. But yeah, again, I think I was quite surprised to see these two as the secondary paired up. But, I kind of felt Wrecker as more of a support type character rather than a secondary. But I really like them. The models are also really good as well. Yeah. But Queen, you've gone with the other secondary from the Bad Batch, and it's Crosshair. So other than being the best range damage character in the game, why'd you like Crosshair?
He's the coolest member of the Bad Batch for a start. Like the voice work D. Bradley Baker does on Crosshair is incredible.
In game, Quinn, you made those rules, not me.
Other than that, he's a departure from what a Republic secondary typically is, right?
Yes, very
typically,
much.
They are all about moving other people around, being that sort of cohesive binding agent that makes everything work. Crosshair's just like, yeah, nah, I'm a lone wolf. You're dead, you're dead, you're dead. He's got that healing ability, which is always cool. Like, relax, I'll handle this. Shooting into someone, like, helping out someone else is a fun little, like, interaction. And then also
I'm still not sure how mechanically in the real world that works, right?
Well, it's like he's taking care of the issue, which is then allowing them to like kind of take a breather for a second.
Okay,
right?
Fair enough.
It's like that shot in like pretty much every like action movie ever, where like one of the bad guys' henchmen is like running towards like the hero. I think it happens in John Wick with Willem Dafoe's character, where he's in the clock tower and he just snipes the guy that's going for John, and it's like, oh, John doesn't have to fight that guy anymore. He can take a minute.
It gives him a second. Fair enough.
I really like his tactic. Just the one ping is just one. It's really cool as like a thing that Crosshair does, because that is like Crosshair's whole thing is like the bouncing mirror shots and all that stuff, and also just that being a secondary that could kill 2 people in one activation is always good for me. I feel.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely, I do very much like it, and actually really good against Galactic Republic as well.
Yeah,
removing those hunker tokens, whilst he doesn't care because he ignores cover, but especially into an Obi-Wan list where they've got all the extra movement and things like that, is quite nice. Quite nice indeed. Okay, then rounding out our favourites, Quinn, we're going to go with you first of all. And you chose, again, what I will call a first wave release support unit, which is the Magna Guard.
Oh, yeah. I mean, Magna Guard is so good. 3 cost, mainly because they don't have a gun, let's be honest.
Yeah, no ranged attack seems to really lower the cost of somebody in this game, doesn't it?
Yeah, but like just the way that they interact with, Separatists as a whole, like, with all those extra movements and attacks that Separatists like just pile onto their like support units. You can't really ask for a better support unit to be moving around and making attack things. 4 long tree caps out at, I want to say 6 damage, which is already pretty damn good.
Yeah. Like, 3 shoves, let's not forget as well.
Triple shove. They've got a reposition in there if they need it. I think there's a heal at one point.
There is indeed, yeah.
Also, incredible expertise. Once again, I think because they don't have that ranged attack, they're just really good in melee. It's just, what 1 is a crit, 2 is 2 crits. Okay, that's pretty damn good for, like, a 6 dice pool character that is realistically 7 because you're playing Kalani.
Yeah. Well, I mean, let's be honest. You feel a little bit disappointed if you're not getting 2 results with these guys, right?
Oh, yeah, you feel like you've done something wrong.
Yeah, which is generally enough to, shove a character off a point, that double shove.
Also, 10 health.
Yeah.
10 health, good defensive expertise, 1 for 1, 2 for 2. They're speedy in the right conditions.
Yep.
And I think that's something I really like about them is they excel in the place that they should be. They're not really splash, but you don't see Magna Guard splash into other lists very often, right?
No, not at all.
Because they are built within that Separatist framework, and they are very difficult to pull out of it. And that's what I want from supports in this game. Secondaries and primaries, you can get away with, like, what if, right? Or, there will have been 1 episode of one thing where 2 people have worked together. That works for me with the named characters, less so for kind of the boots on the ground grunts, right?
Yeah, no, I agree. I agree with that. But I mean, let's be honest, a very solid unit, and also again, it feels like you are playing the Magna Guard, right? What are they there for? They are the bodyguards of whoever it is that is taking them out. Arguably they should have come in the Grievous box, and we'll sort of get on to the squad packs and how they're built maybe in a little bit. I've gone, Quinn, for a little bit of an outlier, which is going to be the Super Commandos, the Mandalorians. And it's more from my Dathomir days, taking these guys alongside them, the interaction between Mother Talzin, where you make somebody move, and then No Mercy, where that person then takes 2 damage because they're no longer engaged with them. So I do really like that, and I've had a lot of fun with them as well. Suffer a little bit, I think, from being an early support unit. Again, we've already mentioned kind of, suffer quite a bit from the fact that they're Mandalorian, and that kind of as a faction still isn't fleshed out. But I really enjoy them. Okay, Quinn. Least favourite primary. I'm going first this time, seeing as you went first last time. And you were glad I put this in here because you asked me last minute if you could change yours, and I said no because I've already picked this one. And it's going to be Darth Vader Jedi Hunter. Now, I want to preface this, Quinn, and say I actually have no issue with 99.9% of the things that are on Darth Vader's card. I think him being a 7 makes perfect sense.
I think if we break this down by word count, it's a bigger percentage than that, but sure.
Well, you know what I mean, yeah. I think he does a lot of damage, right? It's Vader.
That's what you want Vader to do.
He should do a lot of damage. I have one big problem in this, Quinn, and I think yours is exactly the same. It is the tag Galactic Republic.
That's one of my 2 issues.
Oh, okay. Okay. So I'll tell people why Galactic Republic for me. It's ridiculous in my opinion. And I've seen many people go, well, there was a crossover and this and that, and it's like
That there wasn't though, was there? Because Palpatine
whilst
literally goes, the Galactic Republic will be reformed into the first Galactic Empire, like
also
before he's even in the suit.
he is Jedi Hunter. And then I've also, so whilst ever Darth Vader was hunting Jedi, okay, he was in the Galactic Empire, not the Galactic Republic, right?
The only argument that can be made is Nightfall Anakin, and this is not Nightfall
This is
Anakin.
not Nightfall Anakin, no. And then I've heard a lot of people say, well, it's a way of being able to represent Darth Vader fighting alongside the clones, which, in the early days of the Galactic Republic, that is true. The clones became Galactic Empire, though.
Yeah.
Vader didn't become Galactic Republic, and this is where my problem is. They should have picked something like the 501st, made them Galactic Empire as well. I don't think all clones should be Galactic Empire, but, made them Galactic Empire. You can separate them by by their eras, so that you don't have, you can't take a stormtrooper sergeant with a clone trooper, even though you did get a little bit of that at one point. But I think
the clones have their Legion tags, right, or their battalion tags. Like they are 501st, they are 212, they are all of those. All you need to do is add an extra thing onto the 501st coordinate fire, which is also works with 501st.
Yeah.
And then you give Vader Jedi Hunter 501st, and suddenly, this whole issue of Vader being the best Republic primary isn't a thing anymore.
Yeah, because that's the problem, isn't it? Is that Vader is the best Republic primary.
Yeah.
Without a shadow of a doubt. You said you had something else, Quinn, that was not the Galactic Republic. What else is it?
His identity is far too strong.
Yeah, it's very good.
It is way too good. It is like MCP dice numbers in a game that does not work like MCP in terms of dice. No. 3 dice is a lot.
You need to do 3 actions to get 3 extra dice.
Exactly. It is far too many dice for it to be balanced in any way, shape, or form when it can work on anyone.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, there are a couple ways you can fix this. The first one being, I've seen a lot of people say, make it Force user, specific. You have to be a Force user to dig into the dark side and, actually take that damage, get those dice. Or, you make it 2 damage for 1 die, because that's equivalent to a focus action for everyone. Or, if you're Inquisitorious, you get 3 dice instead. Because then those Inquisitor models can be balanced around that. There's not going to be that many of them in the game anyway.
Yeah. I'd be absolutely fine with that, but I do agree, yeah, it's very, very good. There's a reason people take Darth Vader versus Anakin in primary list, because realistically, and I know you're a big Anakin fan, Quinn, but there is no comparison, is there? With what
no
Vader
comparison,
does
because
board-wise.
Vader is a blanket-wide buff for your entire strike team, right?
Yeah.
Whereas Anakin is the solo show. That's just what he does. He's there. He does his own thing. Vader, as a character, not really a big buffer in my mind.
No, not at all.
I feel, the other Vader we have in the game is a much better representation of what Vader as a character is like.
Yeah.
And I think that's also an issue, is you've got a direct comparison point.
Well, and also this kind of, you look at that, take damage, get a thing. That's not Galactic Republic. That's Galactic Empire. If you look at the kind of theme throughout the Galactic Empire. But anyway, let's go for yours, Quinn. And it's going to be a character that I am so... This might be my most disappointing character in this game for what, I was hyped for. Hondo, honest businessman. I'll let you go first, Quinn, seeing as it was your pick, but why is he your least favourite primary?
We're deep enough into the video that I can swear now, right?
You have got one swear word, yeah.
Why the fuck is he a 7? Hondo Onaka, on par with Anakin Skywalker, Count Dooku, Vader, any iteration of... What?
Yeah. And this is one of the problems, isn't it, with the way, and I would probably argue maybe the single biggest problem at the moment with the way in which these characters are designed and the way in which the packs are built is it doesn't leave a lot of room for maneuverability. The difference between the best 7 cost in the game, and I call them 7 cost, but the best 7 squad point primary versus the worst is huge. I'd argue the difference between the only 9 squad point primary in the game.
Yeah, there's a reason CAD was my favourite and Hondo was my least favourite, and it's because of the comparison between the two. Of CAD being something done very right, and Hondo being something done very wrong.
Yeah. Now, don't get me wrong, it still feels like Hondo, right? I like that he's got, the kind of, he's not an honest businessman, is he? He is a scoundrel, and he is going to try and manipulate and do things.
Like, realistically, the only thing that makes him a 7 is his tactic. And that tactic is offset by him bringing 2 Force anyway.
Even then, it's still not very good.
Right, his tactic feels like an excuse to make him a 7 but not bring 4 Force because they thought that would be silly.
Yeah, because he brings 3 or 2. I can't remember.
He brings 2 naturally, which is very low. And obviously you're getting some back every time you go with him. But just, that doesn't feel like Hondo.
No,
like,
not at all.
For me, Hondo's thing should have been objective manipulation, right? Like, he's always out for the score. That is Hondo's entire character. He's an honest businessman, right? Like, he should have just had a thing where you just make his identity, when you're rolling for pro objective, you roll 2 dice and pick which one you want. There you go. That's Hondo.
That could have been quite cool, couldn't it?
I think that would have been really interesting.
Yeah. He was up there for me for my least favourite, as I say, because of the reasons of him being probably my most disappointing character. But let's move on to secondaries, Quinn. You're going to go first, and we've got a little bit of aura sing.
It's another problem. I mean, it's just continuing on from kind of the soapbox I wanted for like my actual picks in this section, which is balancing the cost of characters around the pack they're in. It isn't very good for the overall health and applicability of those characters, right? Because let's be honest, you very rarely see CAD in an actual bounty hunter list because he's just better in Separatists. Because in Sept,
100%.
he lets you bring Kalani and B2s in the same list, which isn't something that's really viable in Sept, and unless you're not playing Dooku, which is not how I play Sept. Aura being a 5, whilst thematically I'm okay with it, because Aura is, a pretty up there bounty hunter.
Yeah.
I'm not sure she's necessarily, more worthy of a 5 cost than Django is. But just, she feels really, really bad for a 5. And, we only have 2 5s in the game in that secondary slot at the minute.
Yes.
And, Kalani is leaps and bounds ahead of what Aura Singh does.
Yeah, I believe, and if we go back, Quinn, to that, and you're going to see some sort of duplication of this conversation when we get to support. In a game where things like movement and manipulation are better than I get to do an attack, that double the contract, double the payout is just not worth
Why isn't
what
it
they...
free?
If it was free, I'd be fine with it,
Keep
right?
in mind, this is a 5-cost model that is 8 health.
Yep.
Like, that's not a lot of health. She gets at most 2 blocks defensively. Like, she's got decent defensive expertise because she has crit negation.
Dice manipulation is good, yeah.
Like, I remember, like, before the CAD box had been, like, previewed, not previewed, but, like, we'd seen the actual, like, characters in it. My big thought with Aura was that she was going to bring a force, right? She was going to be the first instance of a non-primary bringing force, because, canonically, Aura is force sensitive, and with her being a 5, because I think there was a point where we knew she was 5, but not what she did.
Yeah, well, we knew because I think we'd seen CAD was 9,
I think we saw
and the bounty hunters were 4, so it's like, well, she has to be a 5, yeah.
So the thought process being, she's not going to be a big, like, you know, force-wide buffer like Kalai. If she's going to be that really, like, you know, solo independent character, she's a 5 that brings 1 force, because then that offsets CAD being 2 and brings him up to 3 in essence. 5s are very difficult to splash, therefore her bringing 1 force isn't going to impact the majority of lists. Like, there was such potential for what Aura could do, and then we got this.
And I think, and again, like I said, we're going to see it in another example. I think the value that AMG have put on, because most characters in this game are limited to being able to make a single attack, the value they have put on being able to attack more than once, I think has skewed...
It's not even a full attack.
It's not even a full attack. It's a 5-dice attack.
And it has to be a different enemy, which is way worse than what Hunter has, right? Because Hunter can double tap someone. Double tapping, genuinely scary in this game. Doing a proper attack and then a crappy weak one into someone else, far less impactful, I feel.
Yeah, and also not a combat action, so therefore, generally not benefiting from not only her own, expendable distraction, but most other buffs to attacks are going to require it to be a combat action. So
also, she can't use like both her 2 active abilities. We're ignoring Payday for the moment. Those 2 active abilities can't be used at the same time because of the way that the rules work in terms of triggering events.
You've jumped ahead to my errata, so we'll park that. We'll park that for there. Let's go on to mine then, Quinn. And my least favourite is going to be Obi-Wan Kenobi out of hiding.
Yep.
A character that I just don't understand why he is. If I'm being brutally honest, well, I know why. They wanted to sell an $80, $90 pack with him and Vader.
I mean, you're saying $80, $90. I think it's £90 RRP.
Yeah, I mean, maybe it is. Yeah. Look, run is a pretty egregious tactic to have. Turn
the
one...
fact that he doesn't have to be engaged, which there was a whole thing around the time of his reveal or release, where I personally was of the opinion he had to be engaged to use it as well.
Yeah.
Which made far more sense because he's yelling run, as in run away from something. There's an engagement requirement for other people. Why would he not have it for himself?
Yeah. And then it's not that any one of these is bad unto itself. It's the stacking of one on top of the other on top of the other. Mind Trick is just for 2 force. There's nothing else really in the game that does or has as much of an impact as what this does.
This is one of the main areas where I wish this game had borrowed a little more from MCP.
Yeah.
Because in MCP, there are abilities like Loki's Trickster or Gwen's Lifesaver, where you can get a character out of dodge. You can stop them being attacked. But those abilities refund the action to the attacker.
Yep.
Which is very, very important. Well, they don't refund it. They give you an entirely new action. It is technically a different thing. And I can see why that wording wouldn't immediately work in Shatterpoint because you're only allowed one of each action and activation.
Yes, that is
But
true. Yeah.
you can easily do some wording shenanigans to make that work. This being, you can make another attack, but it's not a combat action, even though it takes space within the confines of the combat action you were going to do anyway. And you have 2 less dice.
Well, and something that in the game is a scarce commodity is force, and you could have spent force to empower that attack to do something like
Vader's Fury.
Coordinated fire or a Vader's Fury, and all of those things kind of go away, don't they?
There is also one other major gripe, and this is why I put specifically this character, and even more specifically this ability, in my errata section. Mind Trick should not work off of where the person being attacked is. It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, it should be when a enemy character within 3 makes an attack.
Because that massively reduces the scope of his utility, right? He's not doing it on, ranged attacks for the most part, because that doesn't make a great deal of sense. If you're range 5 away from someone, and then they're range 3 away from Kenobi, he can somehow influence somebody that's range 8 away.
It just doesn't make sense, does it?
Changes that need to be made. It needs to be the enemy that you target with it. It needs to be range 3 of the enemy.
Yep.
2, I would make it so they don't lose the combat action, but they have to redirect the combat action.
Yeah.
And if they can't, then they still make the attack, but with 2 less dice. Or, if you want to change it, you make it 3 less dice, so it is really impactful.
Yeah.
And
but they get all of the stuff that
they get all of the stuff that was pre-established in that. And if you want to change it, and with the way it's being rebalanced, it ends up not being as good as you necessarily want to. You can drop it down a force. You can just go when an enemy character within 3 of this character declares a combat action, pay 1 force, elect an allied character or an allied unit. That unit cannot be the target of the attack action unless it is the only character available, unless it's the only option available. In which case, the attacker rolls 3 less attack dice. Yeah,
and I think that'd be absolutely fine. Yeah. Okay. Least favorite supports. I'm gonna go with mine first, Quinn.
Yep.
IG-11, Assassin Droid.
Really?
Yeah. I played
with him much.
I played quite a bit with him. Yeah.
Okay.
And so again, least favorite doesn't necessarily mean worst, right? Let's just preface that. But again, I think he falls into the category. He's got 2 things. First of all, he's a single support unit, which it seems like AMG are going down one of 2 routes with single support units as to how they balance the game. They either get the Inquisitorus treatment, where they where they break ties when they're contesting, or they're going to get an extra attack. And he falls into the extra attack category. And the problem is that for a unit that is an assassin, he maxes out at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 damage if you manage to roll 4 expertise when you're at range. Which isn't enough to take out most support units, let alone anything else. And that's one of my big problems with it, is the fact that multi-thread targeting protocol, one character in this unit may make a 5 dice at targeting a character in another enemy unit within range.
Oh, hi, Aura Thing. How are you?
Exactly. Kind of all the things you spoke about with Aura Singh, I think IG suffers from as well. And typically, he needs that second tap to be able to take a character out, and he just can't do it. So, and it's more of a disappointment side of things. Like, I loved IG-88, and he's just a little bit disappointing for me. Hence why he is in there. Because he's a little bit lackluster on the. If he had access to two more damage on his tree, I think I'd be happier with it. But yeah, I think he's not particularly good. And Quinn, we haven't had them released yet in the UK, so that's the other reason why. Quinn, you've gone for some Republic clone commandos.
Yeah. The most elite members of the Republic military that aren't Jedi, right? Like,
yep.
These are the cream of the crop as it comes to, like, generic clones, right? And, God, they are bad. Like...
What do you mean? They max out at 8 damage. That's as much as IG-11.
They've got 6 health, Rich. 6 health.
Yeah.
6 health. It's so bad. Yeah, I mean, this comes on to some stuff we'll get to later, but clone survivability is bad. Yeah, 6 health with protection, and like, yeah, you'll go, oh, they've got protection. They're good against small arms fire. Small arms fire is exceedingly rare in this game, I've found.
Yeah.
Almost any primary in the game looks at these guys and they fall over dead. I'd say over half the secondaries in the game look at them, they're dead. A support unit that has 2 models in it looks at them, they're probably dead. Like, effectively, a requirement of going 4 damage twice to kill them is just far too easy.
And we spoke, haven't we, about how, the value of protection, and about how it's not just like 1 extra health, it can be multiple, but you do need a health pool.
Yeah, you need a health pool
to be able to benefit from that.
I mean, if we take a comparison point of Dark Troopers for Empire, they're 8 health, they have a condition immunity and protection, and better defensive expertise. Like, these guys can pump out damage if they're in the right situation, but they very rarely are. They're only rolling 6 dice, like, base, at range. Yeah, they've got okay, like, expertise, but it's the fact that also they are effectively stymied by 1 result in their tree, which is the pin with nothing else on it on 2 results, which very often means you're going 2 damage pin, which just it just feels very lackluster. Like, the amount of dice they're rolling, also Katan class commando armor, some of the most durable armor in, like, Star Wars canon, somehow loses you a result if you roll good on it.
But you do get a move. You get a move.
But you lose a... I hate it so much. Like, they also have the worst coordinated fire in the game. Like, coordinated fire 1 damage is just worse than any condition.
Especially if that unit only has 1 damage left.
like, conditions are always better because you can build your strike team around the conditions that your guys give out anyway. So you can effectively go, cool, I can just make this worth an extra damage.
Yeah,
because I have like a strain really low on most of my trees. Right?
Take them, for example, you put them with the 501st, the 501st dish out the pin. Guess what? That pin is now worth an extra damage, and they get the pin. Right?
Like,
so...
For the guys that are meant to be, like, the tactical spec ops powerhouses, having scale is very nice. The rest of them, not very nice. Honestly, the thing I'd want to see from these guys is a bump in health, an extra damage on the pin, like, result, and then I'd like them to have a coordinated fire where they have a choice of conditions.
Ooh.
So a coordinated fire that is either, like, pin, strain, or disarm. I think that would really lean into the kind of, the specialist spec ops nature of them.
They're the specialist guys. They know that they know the thing that everybody else can do plus some, right?
Yeah, exactly. Like they have a toolbox, right? That's what I want from a spec ops character. Is I want a toolbox, not whatever the hell this is.
Okay, Quinn. Right. No game is perfect, is it? And, you know, typically a year or so into it, you are able to get a good feeling as to what does and indeed what doesn't work. And hopefully, you know, with our favourites there, what you've realised is that we're not just picking out the best characters as our favourites or the worst characters as our least favourite. There's a reason behind it, and some of the things that we've mentioned are changes we would like to see in the game. You know, not huge changes to, you know, fundamentally how the game is played, but erratas that kind of bring things in line. Now, I do think when it took 2 years, I believe, for MCP to get any big changes, and that was a whole bunch of character cards that had everything changed on them from, you know, one number here and there, which, you know, in MCP but also in Shatterpoint could be the difference between them being unplayable and you know, perfectly fine, to complete threat changes. You know, a character that was a 3 threat gets dropped to a 2 threat, and, you know, complete reworks of characters. So we are getting into the realms of possibility over the next 12 months where we could start to see some changes come into, I would say, at least, you know, from the first half of the year, Quinn.
Yeah.
Starting to look at those characters.
I think up until the original trilogy stuff, right?
Yeah. Starting to look at those characters and maybe make some changes to bring them in line, because whenever you're looking at balancing within a game, there's always a bell curve, right? There's always the best characters at the top, and there's a few of them, the worst characters at the bottom, and there's only a few of them, and then the big bell curve in the middle is where the vast majority of characters sit. And the more characters that are in the middle, the more balanced the game is, right? That's just generally how it works. So Quinn's already mentioned his Obi-Wan, so we're not going to go through Obi-Wan on this one, but your pick, and there's obviously lots, Quinn, that we could talk about here. We're going to have one pick each, and then there's going to be one subject I want us just to talk about a little bit more. But you have picked, Quinn, clones, just as a whole, and in particular, support clone units. So your 501st, 212, ARF, and Republic Clone Commandos. Now you've kind of delved into a little bit.
I am very much a broken record on this subject, and I've been banging the drum for a while. Clones are one of my favourite things in Star Wars. They always have been. You know, like Revenge of the Sith is the first Star Wars movie I watched. Clones feature very heavily in that. Also love the Clone Wars. Clones are my jam. And good God, are they bad in this game. Now, first of all, there are going to be a lot of people that go, but this, but that, but something else. You know, they're going to go Mace, Hunter, Obi-Wan, right? Those are the 3 things they're going to call out. And sure, they make clones better, but an entire faction, quote-unquote, of supports shouldn't be relying on 3 of, like, currently I want to say, like, 8 primaries. Like, that isn't conducive to a healthy faction, quote-unquote, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Issues with clones. Number 1, the 501st are god-awful. Like, good God, are they bad. And I know they're a core set character, and, like, arguably that means they're less likely to be errata than others just because they're an entry point to the game. But their stats card is just terrible. Like, it just is. They're fine being at 7 health, because they are 3-cost clones. 3-cost clones being 7 health is fine. Yeah. Should 501st, one of the best, like, you know, standard branches of clones, be 3-cost? Not really, but they go with Anakin, so they have to. Yeah, they need a rework for their stance card. They need to actually be able to do something in the game, because I think you can get a result in with them and do no damage, which is always sad. Things I need to see change with clones. Arguably, the entire hunker mechanic needs an overhaul. If that's going to be their identity,
we've already discussed, haven't we?
That needs to be changed in some way, shape, or form to make it more desirable as an identity. 2, I'd argue for better defensive expertise. 1 for 1 is fine. Needed to get to 3 for 2, and having nothing beyond that, not great. You know, if you're giving them more health, then it's, you know, a lot more reasonable. Generally speaking, coordinated fire is fine. I would change ARFs to not have expose, because I don't really like expose as a coordinated fire option in the game. I think it just feels bad whenever you're on the receiving end of it.
Not when, in this instance, you've got so many models on the board that can benefit from it, right? As well.
It's far less egregious with Night Sisters, for example, because there aren't you can't field a full squad of Dathomirians. Like, it's physically impossible. You can have 4 at most, and one of them is the Night Sisters, so that's 3 people benefiting. Like, that's fine. Clones are so bad. And I think, like, there are other changes that could be made. And, like, you know, I did list those 3 primaries in Republic that help them. And they do help them quite a lot. The issue is that the rest of the primaries don't help them in a way that is comparable, right?
You want to be able to take...
If, like, the whole Republic thing was you have slightly substandard supports, not as substandard as clones are currently, but, you know, think of, like, Magna Guard only being viable in Separatist lists, right? That's what I want from clones. I want them to only really be viable in Republic, because that makes... They were literally bred to serve the Republic. And the way I think you can do that is not only by buffing them individually, which is something I want to see, but also just give every Republic primary a little thing they give to clones, right? Because Mace, when
especially the ones that, I mean, let's not say every Republic, because characters like Padme, for example, Vader,
the people that were like frontline with the clones in the war, right?
Yeah,
those kinds of characters should, like, I think, just give each of them a little buff they can give to clones here or there. Like, give one of them like a little aura of protection, like Wrecker has, or like Mace can do when he's engaged. You know. And another one gives more dice. Another one gives, like, an extra, like, dice on attack. Like, just make it so each, like, Jedi general is like a little microcosm of buffs. Like, they all have one little thing that they buff. And the way you build a Republic list is you choose what generals you want to bring to then bring their, like, combined smaller buffs to help out the clones, right?
Yeah.
Because then you can get away with clones not being great elsewhere, but you can then still have clones feel like, you know, arguably, like, they're the most elite grand scale fighting force that we see in Star Wars. Like, they just are.
Yeah. Maybe with the exception of the Mandalorians.
Well, they're not a large scale force. I'm talking like, you know...
Oh, you mean like legions?
Genuinely, like, you know, galactic superpowers, right? You know, Separatists, Empire, Republic... Arguably Rebels, but they're a bit weird. Like,
the Rebels are a bit more of a ragtag, aren't they?
Well, Rebels rely on their individual characters more.
Yeah,
which is
absolutely.
why their ground troops aren't as good. That makes sense.
Which I'm absolutely fine with.
Yeah.
I've got a little, because we're going to round it out with the discussion around some other things, and I have some thoughts around how it can be worked. But I do think even if you just look at cost for cost, right? ARFs and 501st cost 3. B1s and Magna Guard cost 3.
Yeah.
And I would argue, again, we've said in a game where placement and a game where movement is far more impactful than doing damage, they are leagues ahead, I think. And then again, you know, Republic Clone Commandos versus Dark Troopers are
literally anything.
A bit of a joke. Okay, Quinn. So the one that I wanted to pick up on is all around timing, and I've pulled up an example here, which is Mother Talzin with her reactive ability, Life Drain, and the Night Sister Acolytes with their reactive ability, Coordinated Fire. And what do I mean by this? Well, if you have used, let's say Maul makes an attack and he's used Coordinated Fire, he can't then use Life Drain because reasons. The timings in this game are very, very poor, to say the least, particularly around reactive abilities. So the rules in the game are only one event can have a single reactive ability as part of it.
Which, makes sense in the context of Coordinated Fire, right? You don't want Anakin walking up to someone and them getting, expose and strain from two different sources, right?
Yeah.
That's fine.
I personally think the rules should be changed that say it's only one reactive ability with the same name, right? So you can't stack reactive abilities. Because I think, it's confusing for players. Having to explain to them, look, I know it says after, and this one says, when they make an attack as part of a combat action, but it's the same triggering, the attack is the triggering event, so you can't use it. It is feel bad because they think they're going to get to do something and they can't, and two, it's just bad game design.
It's unintuitive and can therefore lead to people playing something wrong, even though they played it in a way that feels right, which is never something you want, right? You don't want people to think they've done something right and actually it turns out wrong, because that's just never good.
No, absolutely.
Rather than changing it to be abilities of the same name don't stack, I would argue for more granularity in terms of triggering events.
Okay.
I think that would help more. So I think, you have a triggering event, which is the start of an attack. Triggering event, the end of an attack. Because, yes, they're the same action, but they are very different points within that action, right?
Yeah. Again, because you've got things, haven't you, during the modified dice step, I'm thinking of Cody, for example, right? Where he gives the rerolls.
Well, Cody's is innate, but Mace, right?
Oh, it is innate, isn't it? Mace.
He can't use that with Coordinated Fire, even though they were entirely different, timing steps, as you think of them.
Yeah, absolutely. So a little bit of granularity around that would be really good. And I also would like to see, and this is a lot of work, but I would like to see every single card be reworded so that they are correct English. The fact that you have to, there isn't an example on here. I don't think, but the fact that you have to resolve things in the order in which they are done, even if it doesn't say and then, there are times where you can't do things if something didn't happen beforehand, and again, that's not really
it's
clear.
Whole thing of I don't know whether this is a thing with American English specifically, or it's just generally AMG writing things in a weird way and interpreting them in a weird way. But for me, the word "and," if there's two things either side of an "and," they're interchangeable, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Unless there is a "then" involved, because then implies an order to things, right? And it feels like that has just got lost in translation somewhere, and
well, and they sometimes have it.
Yeah, it's
really
and then
inconsistent other times
as well.
Don't. So yeah, that's another
I
thing.
think the first example I think of is it Patience with Obi-Wan?
Yeah.
It says do a triple heal and jump.
Yeah.
To me, that would read as you can jump then heal or heal then jump.
Yeah, it doesn't say and then jump, because the and then dictates the thing that happened before needs to happen before the second thing can happen, right?
Yeah.
But and is just you get access to both. I want to round this out, Quinn, with a conversation, and we've kind of touched upon it once or twice already in this video, but I want to round it out and talk at least something that I think is not necessarily the biggest problem in the game right now, but I think is going to be a problem and could be a problem moving forward. And that is kind of twofold. First of all, the squad point system that we have, and that's not the way in which you build squads. I actually really like that. I think it's a good balancer. But more in the number that you have to choose from is very, very low. So
I mean, it's a very similar thing in MCP, but MCP has ranging values in that, which helps.
Exactly, yeah. And, kind of into that is, the whole granularity of the fact that you can have such different forecasts that because they have to be a forecast, because of the way that the squads are built, the squad packs are sold, causes a huge, huge problem. So I've got a couple of thoughts on how that can be addressed, Quinn, but I wanted to throw it over to you first, just to see what your thoughts on it were. Do you think it's whether it's a problem now or not, do you think it could be a problem moving forward, and what do you think we can do to try and resolve it?
I think it very much can be a problem moving forward. So I'm going to borrow something from Legion, which isn't a game I really play, but there is a mechanic in Legion that I think is very interesting and could help assuage the issues that the squad point system potentially poses in terms of squad packs, which is the entourage rule, if you're familiar with it.
Yep.
Which I believe Krennic has.
I think he does, yeah.
Is, for those of you that don't know, Krennic's the bloke from Rogue One. He has a thing where he's allowed to take more Death Troopers than normal. Because, they're his thing.
Palpatine gets it with the IRG as well.
Yeah, the Imperial Rule. Those kinds of things, where the things that people are synonymous with are more easily available to them. And the way I think you could do that in a game like Shatterpoint is implementing some kind of rule system where the things that come in certain boxes, if they are arguably going to be too powerful elsewhere, you can make it so they are cheaper for the specific person that is leading their box, right?
Oh, I do. I like that.
Because one, that encourages you to play the box, right? But also, it can be used as an indicator for the kind of people that are, specialist specific forces for a given commander, or people who are more generalist and show up in other places, right? So, for example, let's take Gideon's box, right? Gideon's box, Dark Troopers, cheaper for Gideon. He's the only person we canonically see with them. Obviously, they go other places, and they should be allowed to do that, but for Gideon, he has more ease of access to them, therefore, he doesn't pay as much, or whatever else you want to do to implement that ability. The Death Trooper escort in that box, very generic. Can go with literally anyone, because he's literally an escort that is assigned to a given, Imperial official, and, he just goes with them. That's his job. He goes around and follows anyone you want.
I like that a lot. I do like that because I think it addresses some issues. I don't think it addresses all, but I think it addresses a lot of the issues around how the boxes are sold.
Yep.
And the cost of them in there. So you could have you could make Vader a 7 cost, and then he comes with a 4, or you could make him a 6 cost, and he comes with a 4 cost support and a 4 cost secondary, but he reduces the cost of those 2 things that he comes with by 1, meaning that he can take them. But then they have to be good enough.
Yeah.
To be elsewhere.
And effectively, it adds in a half-cost system, where something is effectively halfway between being a 3 and a 4, because it can be either a 3 or 4 given context, right?
Yeah. So I'd sort of thought of something a little bit similar, but with supports in particular, having two sides of their card.
Okay.
So you get a 4-cost version of a character. Let's take 5 first, for example. You get a 4-cost version of that character, and maybe so it's the same models, but maybe they can only be taken with a Vader or so. So similar, kind of similar what you were talking about, but just a different way of achieving it.
Arguably, not even make them double-sided, but just an extra set of cards in that pack.
Or even just an extra set of cards. Yeah.
Vader and Anakin's 501st, or 501st as a general unit. Yeah. I think that is also something I want to talk about with regard to the way boxes are sold. Not necessarily how they're sold, but rather the issue they pose with being errated. Because it is, with the current system they have, it is very difficult to errata the cost of something.
Yep.
Even if it is necessary, it then requires a rebalance of the entire box. If you want to keep it in that same model of you buy something off the shelf, it's
a
immediately
squad
playable.
pack, right? That's how they're sold.
The main example I can think of with this is Mace. I think it's relatively fair to say Mace is not worthy of being a 6-cost.
No,
Mace is very, very good, but 6 is a massive stretch. The reason Mace's pack works and why Mace is viable as a character is because of how good ARF Troopers are for 3.
Yeah.
Because they give out expos. If ARF Troopers were actually balanced to be 3-cost, I don't think Mace would see realistically much play because of how bad Pons is by comparison.
Yeah.
If you wanted to update Mace to a 7, which, with a few tweaks here and there, I think is very much doable, and well within the confines of balance, you then have to do something else in that box. Otherwise, it's a box you buy and it's a point down.
And you can't play. Yeah, well, it's legal to play, but it's not a 7-point box.
It doesn't feel good, right? Because then you either have to make Pons a 4 and do something to update Pons, or you need to make ARFs a 4 and do something to update ARFs. And I don't think that is particularly conducive to an ease of balancing and rebalancing and just addressing issues. Yeah.
Do you think, Quinn, and I want to put this out there, do you think that, because let's be honest, I can't ever imagine a character who is going to bring less than 6 squad points. It feels like that's going to be, that's going to be the bottom end. And then equally, I can't imagine a character that's going to bring more than 9 squad points. It feels like that 6 to 9 range is kind of where everybody's going to sit. And then in the middle of that, you've got like generic human dude that is an 8-3, right? Brings 8 squad points.
Iden Versio, right?
Brings 3/4. Han Solo, right? Generic down the middle. Do you think one of the problems in the game right now is that should be more like 5 to 10 rather than 6 to 3, being able to give you a little bit more granularity to go, do you know what? Actually, this, and this. So Iden and Han aren't the same. I actually think Iden and Han probably should be about the same, but it means that Hondo and Anakin are not both 7, right?
Yeah. I mean, one, I think that's an outlier issue with Hondo in particular. Like,
it is, but...
generally speaking, I think it'd be very difficult to do that, given the scope of Shatterpoint as a game at the minute, in terms of what has been released, what is going to be released. Just because I don't think you would have enough units and enough interchangeability between units for that to work. However, harking back to the idea you had of having different iterations of a given support or secondary within the confines of their box, I think that could massively help. The example I was thinking of in my head, as you were talking about like 6 costs and things like that, was Yoda, right?
Yeah.
Yoda, he's gonna be the most expensive character in the game.
You would imagine Yoda and Palpatine, right?
Yeah, Yoda and Palpatine are like the two, big bads of the entire thing. So my idea for a Yoda box for a while has been that his support unit are Wookiee warriors, and you do it themed around, the droid attack on the Wookiees, right? Yeah. So you have like Wookiee warriors as the support unit in that box, and then maybe Commander Gree, right?
Yeah.
Commander Gree as, just, the clone that you throw in with him because he's there on Kashyyyk. And, in a 6-cost box, they would both have to be 3. Do both of those units feel like they should be 3 for the rest of the game?
No.
Not necessarily. And the way I think you can, help that issue is with multiple instances of unit cards. And I know AMG would probably be very reluctant to implement something like this just because it would be confusing for a newer player. But if you have, like, a little pamphlet in the box, or you have some big identifying marker that shows which version is for which.
Well, you change the names, right? Because all we're talking about here is being able to utilize the same models at 2 different threat levels or cost levels.
See, I was thinking, how every unit has like an era on them?
Yes.
What if, for the ones that are specific for the box leader, the era symbol is replaced by that character's art?
So they can only go in that.
Yes.
In that
they
one.
Only
that would make
on a
it
squad
very easy.
led by that character, and that way you have Wookiee warriors, right? And in the Yoda box, or rather in the Yoda squad, they cost 3, but let's say they don't have guns. Whereas, in the broader scope of the game, 4 cost, they get bowcasters.
Or maybe it's the exact same model, and that's how you balance. That's how you let Yoda take them for less.
But then you run into the issue of you're giving a model that is inherently more powerful based on cost something that is just as powerful as something that shouldn't be able to go
fair.
with them.
Yeah,
I think you need to bring them down a level.
Yeah, but that could be anything as a 1 less stamina. It could
be a different stats card.
They lose access to let's say a 4-cost support has access to 8 damage, right? If they finish their tree 8 damage, they max out at 6 damage, right? Or something along those lines. But I do think right now, and it's not just one problem, but it's kind of a few different problems stacked upon each other.
They're kind of compounding each other.
Yeah, that compounding effect. I do think it is something that they really want to look at sooner rather than later, because the longer it goes on, I think it's going to be harder to rectify. But I would love to see, the 501st have a version of them which is, Vader's 501st. Because then guess what you can do, Quinn? You can get rid of that Galactic Republic tag. And they have, is it Vader's Finest or Vader's Fist? Vader's Fist. And I do think that could work.
I think it'd also
really well
work from a commercial standpoint in terms of let's pretend that Vader Jedi Hunter or none of the Vaders exist right now. Let's wind back 12 months and it's just the core box Obi-Wan Dooku. Darth Vader releases. In that pack, there's a new card for 501st.
Yeah, and that's how you do it, I think.
Yeah.
Because and let's talk about this very quickly as well, because it kind of is in the same vein of the way in which packs are sold right now. And by the way, we're not going to finish on the things we want to change, because I think let's finish on a high, because I think overall we're both very, very happy with the game.
Is definitely deserving of ending on a high.
Oh, absolutely. But I think the other thing I would like to see, and you've kind of just alluded to it there, is moving away from these pre-built, predetermined squad packs. Now, we are already seeing that we're going to get a box of secondaries, right, in the Bounty Hunter box. We spoke for a while, didn't we? And I think we were both quite surprised when Padme was in... And this is... sorry, not Padme. Padawan Ahsoka Tano.
Right, yeah. Her being
wasn't
in
a
a box.
standalone character.
Yeah.
Because we were like, oh, well, you can do an apprentice Asajj Ventress.
Pair it with an apprentice Ventress that then like slots in for Django in the Dooku box.
I think even just that, with then maybe you buy a Vader and you get a new card that's got, you know, Vader's fist in there. Something like that, I think, would work really, really well. And guess what, guys? You're charging, what, 40 quid, 40, 50 quid for a pack of 3 characters. You can, if it's a good enough character and it's a standalone character, you can probably charge 20 quid for the box. And you're making more money per minute. Because, you know, that's kind of where it... You know, I think if they were to charge 20 quid for a Vader by himself, and you got an extra card in there for the 501st...
I mean, people would definitely buy that, but that's because it's Vader. I think it's very dependent on, you know, who it is, right?
Of course it is. But you're not going to give lesser characters their own standalone box, are you? That's like... what the squad packs are for. And maybe some less desirable... You know, let's be honest. People that have watched the cartoons love Hondo. People that have never watched the cartoons don't have a clue who he is.
Don't know Hondo exists. You know, like, yeah.
So
there are definitely some issues with the way that I think they've commercialized Shatterpoint, if that's like the word we're gonna use. Just because, like, I think there is an aspect of the commercial, you know, side of things potentially having too high of an impact on the actual gameplay aspects of the game, right?
Yeah.
And obviously, those two things are very much intertwined because AMG are a business. You know, they need to make money. They're really going to need to make money if Asmodee like saddle them with a bunch of debt after they get dissolved, because that's the thing that could happen.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, so I think the business model is potentially not right now, but moving forward, I think you want some more granularity between the threat levels of characters, and one of the ways in which you can do that is by having these alternative versions of them. So, you know, something that is a 4 cost, all of a sudden under Vader becomes a 3 cost, but it's a slightly lesser version of it or something like that. But only that character can take that model. I think that could work quite nicely.
Also, once again, in terms of monetization aspect, someone buys that Vader and they go, there's cards in here for 501st. I'll have to pick up 501st at some point.
I'll have to grab the 501st core box, yeah, exactly.
There you go, AMG marketing execs, there you go. You can have that one for free, it's on the house.
But let's leave it on a high, Quinn, because again, I am... we've had our ups and downs over the year.
Yeah,
with
I think
Shatterpoint.
There was definitely a lull period before the second mission pack came out.
Yes.
Where it felt like the game had been explored.
Yeah, and I do think that's probably, you know, I would argue we play more than most. You know, most people watching this are probably not going to have the number of games that we've got in there, because we played it to death, right? We literally played it and we were then bored of it.
It's very much what we did with Old World, except Old World doesn't get content every other month.
Absolutely. But I think, you know, let's pick out some positives, and I think, you know, for me, the fact that they are doing, and yes, we've had some delays because of things outside of their control, but the monthly releases, I think, is really good. It keeps the game very, very fresh.
It means you can run monthly events and have new stuff each time, right? which I think is very good, not only for like the health of the game and the interest of the game, but also just stores in terms of actually getting boots on the ground, getting sales made, right?
Yeah, and keeping an interest in the game, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Because you've got to, the stores are a big part of it. So I think with the release schedules, they've done really, really well on that side of things. Again, quality of the miniatures, I don't think can be questioned. No. Yes, please don't use lightsabers as contact points, because best case scenario, they're a pain. Worst case scenario, you get a bad snip, and that
worst case scenario, AMG support get an email, or you fill out that little form. Like, I have 3 Obi-Wan lightsabers now.
Yeah, I think it's good that we're starting to see some official competitive play support
very good
as well.
Yeah, like, given that we spent 5 years of MCP, like, basically begging AMG to do anything in terms of, like, competitive support, it's very good that, a year into Shatterpoint, we're getting that.
We've got
and obviously that's part of a broader scope of AMG just generally being more accepting of, like, helping out competitive and also doing away with worlds because it was costing them a lot of money.
It did, yeah. So, yeah, I think that's good. And then I think, what other positives have we got to say about it, Quinn? I think, it's still a fairly easy game to pick up. I think it's a really simple, not simple game, but I think it's a game you can show people very, very easily. And if you do want to play it more casually, it can also be a beer and pretzels type game as well, can't it? As
while the Americans still having the possibility of additional depth, right?
Yeah. And I really want to finish it, Quinn, and just say it feels like Star Wars.
It does. I have one quick fire thing to end this on a high.
Go on.
Right. Name one obscure character that you're hoping to see in the next year of releases.
Oh.
We've done a year in review. Let's look to the future.
Okay.
So I have mine.
Obviously, outside of the ones that we know that are coming.
Yeah, obviously.
I know my boy Thrawn is on his way. A character that I hope they put in the game that is maybe a little bit more offbeat.
Yeah. Tell you what, if you want more thinking time, I could tell you mine.
I've got mine.
Okay, go for it.
I want me some Quinlan Vos.
Oh, yeah. I like that a lot.
And
that feels like one of those single pack minis, right?
And you know what? He comes with 2 versions of his card.
Oh, light side, dark side.
Because for anyone that's read the book that's based around Quinlan, I think we mentioned it in when we were talking about the Bad
Disciple. Dark Disciple is the book. It was meant to be an arc of the Clone Wars before it initially got cancelled.
Yeah. But Quinlan Vos basically is turned to the dark side by Dooku. I would love that he has got 2 sides to his card, right? He's or 2 cards in there. One of them can be paired with Dooku as a secondary. The other one is probably another Jedi leader or something like that. I think that could be quite cool. Or
maybe he ends up like a secondary when he's like light side. Maybe he's a secondary on both. He's not really like super leadery, is he?
He does run missions, but he's a bit of a solo guy, isn't he?
Yeah, exactly. I think he fits that secondary aspect a bit more than anything else.
Yeah.
What's yours? Nice to have a Republic 5-cost secondary, because then you can pair 3-cost clones with them for an 8-cost.
That is true. That would be very good indeed. Yeah.
Mine is Embo. I want Embo and his dog.
Embo and his dog. You just want a dog in the game, don't you?
With the dog. I don't just want Embo. I want Embo with the dog. Like 50 mil base, Embo, the dog sort of curling around him. Like, Embo's just cool, man.
That is fair. Hat. That is fair. I mean, there's lots of other characters, and that's the good thing, right? Is they are not going to run out of characters anytime soon.
I've just realised Embo is basically the odd job of Star Wars.
Do we ever think we're going to get First Order?
I would love to see some sequel stuff. I know like a lot of people are very, very down on the sequels, and this is something that we talk about in that May 4th special. I'd be happy to see sequel characters. I don't think there's a lot of content you can mine from that, but just having them there, like having 2 squads available for First Order and Resistance or whatever they're called. Like, yeah, just make them playable.
Yeah, fair enough. Fair enough. But there we go, guys. Let us know what you think. I mean, like I say, overall, for a year in, I think AMG have done a very, very good job overall. It feels completely different to any other Star Wars game that's out there. It is not an MCP reskin, which I know is the things that, you know, a lot of people were concerned about. But I would say it's the second best Star Wars miniatures game I've played.
Oh, fucking Imperial Assault.
Imperial Assault is... But I love my narrative type
also, Imperial
things,
Assault
right?
wasn't, like, properly a miniatures game, right? It was, like, halfway to a board game.
It was somewhere in between. They had they had like events that were... Because you did have competitive
for
play.
Monopoly, Rich.
That is true. Yeah,
and Monopoly is inherently, by design, a flawed game because it's anti-capitalist. And it's designed to showcase the pitfalls of capitalism.
But yeah, I think they've done a really, really good job. Like I say, you know, we give AMG some shit, but credit where credit is due. They've made a very, very good game. Very excited for what's already been announced coming over the next 12 months, but also, soliders. You know, some good soliders who follow orders, but also for what else is there as well, because we know that they've not shown us everything yet. So, yeah, very much looking forward to it. Guys, we're going to leave it there. Thank you so much for joining us. I want to give a big shout out to all of our Patreons. They just make the running of the channel that much easier. And if you do want to support us, you can do so from as little as £1 a month. There'll be a link down in the description below. Or you can become a YouTube member as well. Also want to give a... And by the way, you don't need to do either of those things to support the channel. Just simply liking, commenting, subscribing. Let us know what your favourite Star Wars Shatterpoint moment is over the past 12 months, whether it was getting your core box for the first time, or whether it was, you know, one-shotting a Dooku with the Bounty Hunter group or something like that. Whatever it may be.
One-shotting a Magneto with a Craven throwing spear round 1.
That's not Shatterpoint.
I know, but I like to bring it up whenever I can.
You know, Gar Saxon completely surprising your opponent and dazing or wounding one of their characters turn 1, which is still always my favourite thing to do. Oh, by the way, worst errata was stopping me from doing the Kalani Kraken combination. Infinite attacks. But well,
no,
but yeah. 3. Well, no, because technically then the other one...
It would stop at 3. No, because then they can't do it again, can they?
Well, I know, but that's I know, right? But that would have been like if the rules were removed, they would have been able to. If the rules
were entirely different, I could have had infinite attacks. That's why it's not different.
That one, yes. But yeah, make sure you follow us over on Discord. We talk all things Shatterpoint plus a whole bunch of other stuff as well.
You can follow people on Discord.
Yeah, apparently, yeah. Join Discord. There's a link down in the description below.
There we go.
And as always, guys, it leaves us just enough time to say stay well, keep safe, and until next time, may the Force be with you. Insert Quinn's little quip here.
Something dark side.
Excellent. Bye for now.